Hello, this is the Philip Koerper Show. I am Philip Koerper. This is episode 67, November 13th. I wanted to lead off. The Florida debacle continues. There are three races that have not been decided yet in Florida. The governor's race, the race for the Senate with Ron DeSantis, and then the Department of Agriculture. And so I believe that's the other one. Anyhow, they're recounting votes. It's just a huge debacle. Most of the blame is being attributed to the Broward County election supervisor, Brenda Snipes. She has a history of election missteps that even her supporters label amateurish at best. Protesters carried signs that read, "Corrupt Snipes, lock her up, busted Brenda. I trust Ivanati more than Brenda." So anyhow, lots of rhetoric. So now it just goes to the lawyers. You know, this is why it's really good that we have a two-party system. The Republicans send a bunch of lawyers down there. The Democrats send a bunch of lawyers down there. And now we're just going to have to fight it out, basically, with the judges and the courts. And hopefully the truth will prevail. It is frustrating, though, that we see so much corruption with voting. Incredible corruption. I think both sides would even agree to that. And the Republicans, whenever they try to ask for voter ID and stuff, the Democrats just go berserk. So anyhow, we'll see how that shakes up. Also, this is going on in Georgia. And so originally, Stacey Abrams conceded the race for governorship to Brian Kemp. Now, no, she wants every vote to be counted, and that she's winning there with that she's gained about 5,000 votes tallied over the weekend. Anyhow, there's a lot of rhetoric on both sides of the fence there. And a judge who is appointed by Obama said that these provisional ballots can be counted. So we'll see how that turns out. Brian Kemp's ahead by quite a few votes there. But Stacey Abrams, she's trying to push his vote tally like below 50%. So then there will be a recount. So anyhow, then on a sad note for Republicans, Kristen Sinema is now the senator who will take Jeff Flake's spot. One Brigham Young grad for another. Martha McSally conceded in that race, the Republican. So I was reading up on both of these ladies who are really pretty incredible careers. Martha McSally was basically the first fighter pilot that the United States Air Force has ever had, because I think in the 90s, that's when they changed the ruling that women can fly combat missions. And so she flew an A-10. So that is sad. You know, Martha McSally, when she was a congresswoman, she's down in southern Arizona was her district. And those districts are getting very Latino-oriented, very Democratic, very anti-Republican. So it's pretty hard, I think, for her to hold on to that seat. She initially, as a congresswoman, was a moderate, and didn't fully embrace Donald in 2016. Afterwards, she did embrace him more. But still, she's not like a super staunch conservative. Even though she did embrace Donald there towards the end. Kristen Sinema is really quite far left, a leftist. It is interesting that she went to Brigham Young University. She, I guess, used to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Then she reported that she was bisexual. She divorced her husband. So anyhow, not the traditional Latter-day Saint there at all. Kind of interesting. So anyhow, that's kind of a bummer that we lost, due to Jeff Flake. This is so frustrating. I am frustrated with Jeff Flake, who used to be so conservative in the House of Representatives, then he becomes a senator and really starts moving towards the left. And now a huge nemesis to Donald Trump and really fighting back on our agenda. And then we lose a Senate seat. Donald did admit to pushing him right out of office. I am glad that we got rid of Jeff Flake. I guess this is the risk when we got rid of him, that we could lose the seat, and the Republicans did. So it's very sad that that happened. Anyhow, I had a friend send me this debate on nationalism. It's so funny. Emmanuel Macron, who's got Donald's been tweeting about him. He's got very low approval ratings, apparently less than 20%. Donald's tweeting, "Make France great again." So Macron, for some weird reason, he invites the Donald out to France. Of course, he's going to have to invite him. But he does invite the President of the United States out to France so we can celebrate 100 years from Armistice Day of World War I. And, basically Donald comes out there, and then Macron just, slams him on this nationalism and says, this is just no good. And basically says that we want patriotism, but not nationalism. And this really criticizes anyone who believes in nationalism. This is all just a definition game. And we all know what Donald is trying to say about nationalism. It's going to be America first. And every president of the countries, Donald said, you should be out there to take care of your country. In the United States, the President of the United States swears allegiance to the Constitution, right, of the United States, not of France or England or anyone else. And so he's the president for us. He's the head of state for the United States. He should be watching after our interests. But of course, global interests are important for the United States too. And peace and prosperity for other countries is paramount for us. It makes us even safer. So anyhow, Macron, for some reason, just goes after Donald on this nationalism thing. It's really, really silly. But the lyrics of the French national anthem are really, really interesting. And arise, children of the fatherland. Okay, of course I'm reading to you. I'm reading this in English. The day of glory has arrived. Against us tyranny's bloody standard is raised. Do you hear in the countryside the roar of those ferocious soldiers? They're coming right into our arms to cut the throats of your sons, your women. To arms, citizens, form your battalions. Let's march, let's march. Let an impure blood water our furrows. What does this horde of slaves, of traitors and conspiring kings want? For whom have these vile chains, these irons, been long prepared? Frenchmen for us. Ah, what outrage, what furious action it must arouse. It is to us they dare plan a return to the old slavery. Okay. So anyhow, this is a very nationalistic song. We are nation states. It looks like that is the balance. Okay. How big does the governments get, all over the earth? It looks like nations. The Bible talks about nations. God talks about nations. We have nation states. We have nations throughout the world. It seems like that's kind of the sweet spot as far as the size of the government our organizations could be. I like how in the United States that we even divide up our nation, the national federal power, into state power. That's the beauty of the United States, where we really separate power out and divide the power between the federal government and the state governments. And so there's checks and balances there. So the federal government doesn't get too big and powerful. And I really love that. I think other countries really struggle with that. I noticed that when I was living down in Mexico, that the license plates on all the cars are the same. It'll have a state designation, like for Mexico City, it'll have MEX, or actually Distrito Federal is what it has. But for Chihuahua, it'll have like a CHIA or something. There'll be abbreviations for different states. I like how in the United States we have different plates for each state, and the states make up their own plates. They're very different. It's a little illustration of federalism and how the states have a lot of power and sovereignty over us, some power, and then the federal government has others. Donald did tweet out today, there is still this mumbling about how he didn't go to this cemetery. And anyhow, give me a break. It's ridiculous. But anyhow, Donald tweeted today, by the way, when the helicopter couldn't fly to the first cemetery in France because of almost zero visibility, I suggested driving. Secret Service said no, that's all caps. Too far from airport and big Paris shutdown. Speech next day at American cemetery in pouring rain. Little reported, fake news. So Donald went to a different cemetery. So anyhow, the left will just pick on Donald left and right. You know, they talk about we all have to get along and divisiveness, and yet they pick on Donald for the silliest things. It's hashtag resist. Anyhow, speaking of resisting, CNN files a lawsuit against Donald and his administration over Jim Acosta's press credentials. Oh boy. Oh yeah, CNN is really exercised here. They said the wrongful revocation of these credentials violates CNN and Acosta's First Amendment rights of freedom of the press and their Fifth Amendment right to due process. A statement from CNN reads, this is from NBC News, the network filed the suit in Washington, D.C. district courts, and they have asked for an immediate restraining order requiring the pass to be returned to Acosta. Listed on as the defendants of the suit are Donald, of course. Okay, this and you know, this article, it just says Trump. You know, it doesn't say President Trump. They're so disrespectful. In addition to White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, Deputy Chief of Staff Bill Shine, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, and the U.S. Secret Service and its Director Randolph Ailes, and an unnamed Secret Service agent. Oh, probably the guy who actually took the pass away from him. On Tuesday, Sanders responded to the suit saying, Sarah Sanders said, that CNN has nearly 50 other pass holders and that Acosta is no more or less special than any other media outlet or reporter with respect to the First Amendment. We have been advised that CNN has filed a complaint challenging the suspension of Jim Acosta's hard pass. This is just more grandstanding from CNN, and we will vigorously defend against this lawsuit. I mean, of course, CNN could send anyone. They got some guy in there now who's covering for Acosta. Who cares about Jim Acosta? So this is really interesting. Finally, some other media outlets have gone against Jim Acosta. Oh, I love it. Oh, yes. Okay, we finally have some others who are going to speak up, which is great. And then let's see. It's Pointner is one of them. And they said Jim Acosta's encounter Wednesday at a White House press conference was less about asking questions and more about making statements. In doing so, the CNN White House reporter gave President Donald Trump room to critique Acosta's professionalism. Acosta asked the president if Trump had demonized the caravan of Central Americans trekking towards the United States, ending his exchange by stating, "It is not an invasion." If Acosta had asked, "What about that seems like an invasion?" he could have both sought an answer and avoided becoming bigger than the event he was covering. If you look, so anyhow, this is good. And they talk about the video, and they thought that Donald answered the questions quite nicely. But then they say, but then Acosta's questions ended and his statements began. Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls, Acosta said. And then there are hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion. Okay. So anyhow, he said Acosta should have handed over the microphone. So very, very good. The other one is PBS, I think. Let me see. Oh, BBC. BBC said Jim Acosta was called on by the president to ask a question. I'll say that again. He was called on by Donald Trump to ask whatever question he liked. And when he finished asking one, he then asked another with interruption follow-ups in between. It was only when he attempted his third question, or possibly fourth, depending on how you define the follow-ups, that the president got angry and asked him to sit down. What happened? Oh, so this is according to the BBS. What happened in that room was not the ultimate fight for press freedom. This wasn't somehow risking life and limb against a regime where freedom of speech is forbidden. This was a bloke sitting in a room full of colleagues who were all trying to ask questions too. This was a man who had had his turn and had been told he couldn't hog the whole time. The president took CNN's question and then took more. And when he tried to move on, he couldn't. Once the Acosta incident was over, he went on to take questions from journalists from all over the world for a total of 90 minutes. Oh, yes. The BBC lays it out. Oh, Jim Acosta is all about Jim Acosta, drawing attention to himself. Rush Limbaugh was saying that Jim Acosta has been trying to just bug Donald to no end to get something like this to happen, and just loves all the attention. He's an attention whore. He just loves all this. And so I'm glad that the BBC and Poynter, both these news organizations, have stood up and, stated the obvious. Jim Acosta is just totally out of control. And he just did this on purpose to get all the attention, I guess. Who knows? But I'm glad that the Donald stood up to him. He's a real bad person. Well, what did Donald call him? Like a real something. CNN shouldn't hire him. Oh, Donald scolded him. I loved it. Oh, speaking of scolding, Ocasio-Cortez. Okay. The new freshman representative, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Okay, she's all mad about Amazon. So Amazon came out, Jeff Bezos, their second and third headquarters are going to be in New York City, like Queens. And then the third headquarters is going to be North Virginia, I guess south of D.C. And so anyhow, Ocasio-Cortez, she is, this liberal, she doesn't like this. She is mad. Okay, and so she's going on a series of tweets that she sent out like past midnight last night. And she says Amazon is $1 billion company. The idea that it will receive hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks at a time when our subway is crumbling and our communities need more investment, not less, is extremely concerning to residents here. By the way, the public subway thing is so dumb. What a mess. We should privatize all that nonsense. Amazon's split decision means that selected locations can expect to share as many as 50,000 jobs and roughly $5 billion in investment between New York and Arlington, Virginia, Crystal City neighborhood. Okay, but Ocasio, she's upset. We need to focus on good health care, living wages, affordable rent. Corporations that offer none of those things should be met with skepticism. It is possible to establish economic partnerships with real opportunities for working families instead of a race to the bottom competition. Oh, she hates capitalism. She is a socialist. At least she's out and open about it. She says, lastly, this isn't just about one company or one headquarters. It's about cost of living, corporations paying their fair share, etc. It's not about picking a fight either. I was elected to advocate for a community's interests, and they requested clear to voice their concerns. There you go. They're the Democrats. This is the leader. She is the next leader of the Democrat Party, according to the DNC chairman, Perez, or whatever that guy's name is. This is her. Talking about jobs. This is why job opportunities in the United States are better now than under Obama, when you're just a socialist, so worried about cost of living and paying fair share and picking fights with corporations and making business very unfriendly. Oh my, she is crazy. She's absolutely crazy. Hey, on good news here, Waymo is launching its self-driving service in early December, it looks like. This self-driving thing is just so exciting. Pretty soon, we will not drive cars anymore. The computers will drive the cars. There will be hardly any more accidents. There'll be no more drunk driving, no texting when driving, crashes. The blind and disabled people will be able to zoom around in cars. Traffic will decrease. People will commute further distances. It'll make travel so much safer and faster and more efficient. This self-driving car thing is just huge. The car insurance companies are furious. They're going to, just 40,000 people are killed in cars every year, 2 million injuries. This is incredible cost to our society. And we are going to be able to figure this out with computers. It's just brilliant. I'm so excited about it. I wanted to close the show with the scripture in Matthew. Let's see. John chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Thank you so much for listening. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show, copyright 2018. You can subscribe on iTunes or SoundCloud or watch the video on YouTube. Have a great day. Bye-bye.